OPEC Plus to reduce its output.
I think it is a mistake on their part. I think it's time for a wholesale reevaluation of the U.S. alliance with Saudi Arabia.
They're desperate to hold on to power. They're willing to say and do anything. But let me tell you this, I'm not deterred.
I'm announcing a pardon for all prior federal offenses for the simple possession of marijuana. There are thousands of people who are convicted for marijuana possession who may be denied employment, housing, or educational opportunities as a result of that conviction. My pardon will remove this burden on them.
That was President Biden announcing the first major steps towards fulfilling a campaign pledge. Welcome to Red and Blue. I'm Nancy Cordes, coming to you from our Washington, D.C. bureau. Thanks for joining us. We're going to begin tonight with a series of October surprises. One of them coming just this afternoon from the Biden administration, which has announced that the president is pardoning thousands of Americans who were convicted of possession of marijuana. And the White House is asking governors to do the same. This comes at a time when Democrats are eager to energize young voters just over 30 days before midterm election day. The other surprise, a decision by the group of oil-producing countries known as OPEC Plus that could end up hiking prices at the pump here at home. We're going to get to that in a moment. But first, to discuss both of these things, I want to bring in a couple of my CBS News colleagues, Stephen Portnoy and Caitlin Huey-Burns. Stephen is CBS News' radio White House correspondent, and Caitlin is a CBS News political correspondent. Welcome so much to you both. Caitlin, I'll start with you. Lay out for us what exactly it is that the president announced today when it comes to marijuana and who it's going to affect.
Yeah, Nancy, well, this is a pretty big decision coming from the White House today, and it basically does three things. First, the main component is that it pardons federal offenses of simple marijuana possession. It also urges governors to do the same, and that's significant because the White House says that the majority of marijuana offenses are at the state level. So you're seeing that urging there, and there are a handful of states where marijuana is not only illegal, but it's also criminalized, and it hasn't been decriminalized yet. And it is also ordering the Health and Human Services Department to essentially review the way that marijuana is classified. The Biden administration argued that it's essentially classified on the same level as heroin and less and stronger than fentanyl, which of course is a huge issue. So this kind of taken together, the timing is really interesting here, which we'll talk about in a moment. But who it stands to benefit, they say about 6,500 people will benefit from this. But it's important to note that no one is currently serving federal prison time for a simple marijuana sentence. So it's not going to all of a sudden release lots of people from jail. The main point of it, as you heard from Biden, was that it kind of removes these barriers for people when they're applying for jobs, trying to get housing, and other types of barriers in place. But the administration hailing this as a big deal.
Stephen, I think it's such an important point that Caitlin makes, which is that nobody is currently serving time in federal prison solely for federal marijuana possession. So it's not as if these pardons open the floodgates for people to be let out of prison. Nobody's going to get let out of prison at this moment because of this executive order. Yet it is still a big shift for this president.
It's a significant one, and I think the last point that Caitlin made in terms of what the president's going to be doing today is important. He's starting a conversation within the federal government of reclassifying marijuana. For decades, in contravention of public opinion in this country and the decisions of several states, marijuana has been classified as a Schedule I drug, which essentially says that there's no useful medical purpose. And we know so many states say that there is a medical use for marijuana. So the conversation is going to begin for the first time in decades. Advocates say it's long overdue. Most Americans would say it's long overdue. But importantly, politically, this is something now less than 5 weeks to go before the midterm elections. The president is going to be able to turn to young people in particular and say, this is something that I'm doing that you're concerned about. Despite the fact that for years, Joe Biden, as a senator and even as a candidate, was a bit reluctant to say that there should be a decriminalization. He most recently said in a campaign that he does not believe that people should go to prison for marijuana use, but he also believed that there should be some scientific conversation here about the impact of marijuana, and that's part of the review that HHS and the Department of Justice are going to be undertaking now.
And Caitlin, Stephen brought up young voters, and that is such a good point because recent polls have showed us that young voters are not necessarily all that fired up to vote in this midterm election. It's a big problem for Democrats. Is that what's behind the president's decision to announce this now?
Well, you can't help but look at the timeline of this. We're a month away from the midterm elections, where you note that there is a depressed base kind of across the board, and the White House has been looking for ways to tout accomplishments to appeal to that base. And a big target has been young voters who typically don't turn out in midterm election years the way that they would in general election years. And even in general election years, that number is quite low. And so this could be a way to help to rile them up, especially as we see kind of the way in which the student loan proposal has really hit a bunch of snags. The other important thing is look at how some of the Democratic candidates running this cycle are responding. And I'm thinking of John Fetterman, who, of course, is running for Senate in Pennsylvania. Remember last month when President Biden went to Pennsylvania, Fetterman was asked if he would campaign with him, and he said, yeah, I want to appear with the president because I want to talk to him about marijuana policy. That was a very specific ask. And this afternoon, after this was announced, Fetterman released a statement calling it a, quote, BFD, which we all know what that means. It's not really quite something I can say on air, but essentially saying this is a very big deal, and this was something that I asked the president to consider. So he's trying to really capitalize on that in a very close race in Pennsylvania. It gives you a sense of kind of how some people are going to try to play this. It also could open the floodgates, of course, to Republican criticism, and that's why it's important to note nobody's getting out of jail for this, but you might have some Republicans or those on the right critical of this, as crime, of course, is a huge issue in this campaign.
Right, and polls showing that race is tightening in these final weeks. I want to switch gears and talk about the other big story of the day, and that is oil and the very public disappointment that the president is now expressing over the fact that these large oil-producing nations known as OPEC Plus have decided to throttle back production in November by 2 million barrels a day, which many fear will drive up the price of oil once again. We had a chance to talk to the president briefly as he headed to Marine One this morning about that. Let's take a listen to that.
What's your reaction to the OPEC Plus decision, Mr. President?
Disappointment, and we're looking at what alternatives we may have.
Is Venezuela one of those alternatives?
There's a lot of alternatives. We haven't made up our mind yet.
So there are a lot of alternatives, Stephen. Explain what the White House did to try to lobby these OPEC nations not to take this step. Why was it unsuccessful? Why are these OPEC countries so determined to throttle back their production?
They're throttling back production because they see what all oil analysts see, which the White House sees too, which is that over the last several months, the price of oil has actually been declining in the marketplace. So they want to curb that. They want to boost the price of oil, so they're going to crimp supply.
And we should put up a graphic because we actually have something that really, displays the situation that these nations are facing. We had a high back in June of $114 a barrel. That has plummeted now to $84 a barrel.
Right, and this is the product that they're selling. So they want to see the price of a barrel of oil go back up. They're going to cut supply. You can understand the dynamic there, supply and demand. The American position has been, for months, that the American gasoline buyer, the car driver, needs some relief here. And what the White House has tried to stress for several months is that as the price of oil has come down, Americans haven't seen the similar decrease proportionately at the pump. The president sent his envoys to Saudi Arabia multiple times to try to put pressure on the OPEC countries not to do this. The president himself went to Saudi Arabia over the summer and said that he expected that the Saudis would share the urgency that the Americans were expressing. And based on the discussions that he said he had in July, he expected that further steps would be seen in the coming weeks. What did we see instead? We saw OPEC Plus cutting its supply. The president has a couple of things he can do here. He's already done most of what he can do with respect to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, ordering back in March an unprecedented release of 1 million barrels a day of America's Strategic Petroleum Reserve, a release that's scheduled to wind down at the end of this month. Yesterday, he announced he's going to put 10 million more barrels from the strategic supply into the American market. But at a certain point, we're still waiting to hear what the president's going to do next. They indicated yesterday they might still do this going forward, but there's no way to know how much more they can tap the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. So instead, what you had was the White House today saying again that difference between the wholesale price of oil and the retail price of gasoline needs to come together. Essentially, that amounts to a lot of finger wagging at the oil industry. This allows the president to say and use the rhetoric that he's talking to the oil companies on behalf of the American people, but ultimately this is going to be pressure for him too politically. In the last week, the price of an average gallon of gas has gone up 8.5 cents. Right. And that's going to have some serious impact, potentially, if the price continues to rise as the midterms near.
And let's talk about the other storyline that's bubbling underneath all of this, which is that when you talk about OPEC Plus, this isn't just the Gulf states. You're not just talking about Saudi Arabia and Iraq and Iran. You're also talking about Russia. And there's a concern that perhaps the OPEC Plus nations decided to do this to help Russia bring up its oil revenues at a very critical time for that country in its invasion of Ukraine.
The press secretary to the president said yesterday that OPEC Plus is now aligned with Russia on this point. And it's really starting to create a circumstance in which the question is, what is the current state of American-Saudi relations? The president today said that it indicates that there may be some problems there. And on Capitol Hill, members of both parties are starting to question the relationship that the United States has had historically with our longtime allies. Late as this summer, the president approved a rather large sale of arms to the Saudis. And you had Senator Dick Durbin, who's the majority whip in the Senate, the number 2 in the leadership there, suggesting that perhaps it's time to reevaluate the relationship.
The other question is, what else can the U.S. do? Caitlin, there was this report in the Wall Street Journal that perhaps the White House would be willing to lift some sanctions on Venezuela, another big oil-producing nation, in exchange for Chevron being able to produce more oil there. That's a very controversial move. You've already got Republicans speaking out against even the notion of doing something that would appear to be cost-setting a dictator. They don't like the idea. So what's the thinking behind this? How realistic is it?
Exactly right, Nancy. And I believe that you asked the president this as he was departing earlier today, and he essentially said options are on the table, wouldn't be specific, but it is something that even the consideration of this proposal has already invited a wave of criticism from Republicans really across the spectrum. And it really feeds into this message that they've been trying to hammer him on in terms of energy production, because they've been essentially arguing that there are things that the president could do in terms of drilling here at home, things that would take longer, of course, to affect the price of gas, but nonetheless using that as part of their argument. So you've heard of Republicans say, or at least kind of craft the argument, that here you have the president considering easing sanctions on Venezuela, a murderous dictator, instead of seeing these options here at home. And so this is going to certainly invite a lot of criticism if he does go that route, but speaks to those exact challenges that you and Steve were talking about, which there are a few options really on the table, and this is something that hits people's personal economies so closely.
No easy choices here. Caitlin Huey-Burns and Stephen Portnoy, thank you so much. Well, CBS News has confirmed the FBI has gathered what it feels is sufficient evidence to charge President Biden's son Hunter with tax and gun-related crimes. The materials were sent to the U.S. Attorney in Delaware, according to sources familiar with the investigation. The president's second son acknowledged in 2020 he was the subject of a federal probe into his taxes. A spokesperson for the U.S. Attorney's office declined to comment. Well, candidates across the country are raising record-breaking amounts of cash. Where that money is going in the final weeks before the midterms. You're streaming Red and Blue, reporting across the political divide.
You ready?
A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white? A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming free speech.
It's evident that there's a wave of censorship across the nation.
Angry partisan debate in schools.
College campuses have not been a place of intellectual diversity for the longest time now.
Are loud voices silencing a generation.
I don't feel comfortable speaking out.
I started to realize I wasn't even discussing stuff in class. I was keeping all my thoughts to myself.
Are the kids all right? Free speech. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When weather turns extreme,
the 150-mile-per-hour hurricane is still churning north.
Every second counts.
Massive and rapidly intensifying.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
Well over 9 feet. This is not survivable.
You'll have time to get prepared.
You want to have the advantage on severe weather days.
It just may save your life.
CBS News and extreme weather. Feel the forecast.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking.
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
Innovative and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yeah. We found it.
You're kidding me!
We got it. We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
I'm here for you. Take an orange? Yes. You do? Here. America needs drivers.
And we're here to help.
What are you learning from Girls on the Run?
Never give up and to always keep trying.
If I'm a parent in your state, I'm like, what's Congress doing?
Beyond this gate is actually the border with Ukraine.
We've seen people not just opening their hearts to Ukrainian refugees, but their homes.
Where will you go?
I think it is a mistake on their part. And I think it's time for a wholesale reevaluation of the U.S. alliance with Saudi Arabia. What's the point of looking the other way as the Saudis chop up journalists and repress political speech inside Saudi Arabia if, when the chips are down, the Saudis effectively choose the Russians?
Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Nancy Cordes, and that was Democratic Senator Chris Murphy on the United States' relationship with Saudi Arabia, one of many lawmakers reacting to the OPEC oil production cut announcement. Joining me now to discuss this and more are Ashley Etienne and Leslie Sanchez. Ashley is a brand new CBS News political contributor and the former communications director for both Vice President Kamala Harris and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Leslie is a CBS News political analyst and Republican strategist. And let's start with you, Ashley. Welcome to CBS News. It is so great to see you and great to have you on the team. I want to start by asking you about this new marijuana announcement that President Biden just made. Which segments of the Democratic Party are going to be cheering this announcement, and why is he taking this step now?
Yeah, great to be with you, Nancy. Thanks for having me. I'm excited about joining the team. So, I mean, I think, the first thing that comes to mind, obviously, is promises made, promises kept. I mean, the president talked about this on the campaign trail. He leaned into it, and he's actually delivered on it. So I think you're right. I mean, it's going to attract young voters, but there's a lot of people who I think could be excited about this, but not just this, but how the president has been delivering on his promises on the campaign. 10 million jobs created, record unemployment. So there's a lot in what the president's been able to produce and deliver for the American people that are key constituencies that are going to be important to turn out in the midterm that they can wrap their arms around and be excited about. This is just one of many.
Leslie, let's talk about this OPEC Plus news and the fact that if oil prices start to go back up, then gas prices are sure to follow. And actually, take a look at this graphic. They're already creeping up in the past few days. They're up by about 10 cents or so after falling for a couple of months. So what does that mean for President Biden as he makes this final midterm election argument that he's the one who has been able to help bring down gas prices in the past few months?
I think there's a lot of frustration on the Republican side. Many people believe that the administration's policies have really hampered energy production, energy producers in the United States, kicking and killing off Keystone Pipeline, reducing the amount of production in the United States, energy production, oil production, to its lowest levels. And tied to that, Nancy, are the tremendous number of jobs that go into the energy industry. So it isn't just people feeling the pocketbook aspect of high gas prices on their family, household. It's also the number of jobs and how it impacts these families and in key states that have a lot of battleground competitions this fall. So they feel it across the line, and there's not going to be an easy fix.
I want to talk to you guys about third quarter fundraising numbers because they have just been released. They are hot off the presses, and they are really interesting. So let's take a look at the money that Democrats and Republicans who are running for Senate have been able to raise in the third quarter. Let's start with the Democrats, Ashley, because you see them there on the screen. Raphael Warnock, $26 million. John Fetterman, $22 million. Mandela Barnes, $20 million. Tim Ryan, $17 million. These are pretty impressive figures. Where is the money coming from? And is it a problem anymore when a majority of the money comes from out of state?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, it's very encouraging that our candidates are out raising their Republican opponents, in some cases by double digits. But here's the key is that, ads and money don't win elections, right? What actually does is a ground game. And that's what we're, as Democrats, incredibly strong at, is pulling out a ground game. So it's not the money nor the ads that will win this election. And, and you couple that, the midterm elections, you couple that with how the president's been able to deliver, with very tight margins in the Senate and the House. I think that's the winning combination, which is strong ground game and an incredible story to tell about how we've improved people's lives over the 24 months that the president has been in office. And again, I mean, I think it's sort of, we can't say this often enough because it's incredible what he's been able to accomplish in such a short period of time. The job creation, record low unemployment, bipartisan bills on infrastructure. I've been in Washington, D.C. for 20 years. We've been talking about an infrastructure bill for the entire time. The president's been able to do it in a bipartisan way, bipartisan legislation on guns, as well as to lower drug costs. So that, to me, is going to be the winning combination. I think we overinvest and overfocus on the money aspect of this. I mean, I've been a part of many campaigns that outraised their opponent but lost. But it comes down to the ground game and to this incredible story about how the president's been able to deliver for the American people that I think is going to make the difference. It really enables us to really localize these races in a way that I think will have a big impact for turnout.
Leslie, we've only got a couple of numbers so far for Senate Republican candidates, but I want you to weigh in on why they appear to be getting outraised at this point in time by their Democratic counterparts. The one that really stands out is Herschel Walker raising $12 million to Raphael Warnock's $26.
I know, and I was talking to some voters today in states as far away as Nevada, Arizona, and Texas who saw some of those Herschel Walker, fundraising letters that are asking for small contributions. I will tell you, Republicans have been at a deficit with respect to Senate candidates through most of this election cycle. And I want to welcome Ashley on board. It's exciting to be working with her. And I agree with her on the point that it is not the money. I, too, have been on numerous campaigns that outraised their opponent, but we lost badly. These are voters that are, as we are in the last 30 days, a little bit more than that of the election, have made up their mind. And now it is an activation game on the ground. But what we're not taking into consideration, you do have the Trump effect. I hate to be the person to bring that up in the conversation. We went so long, Nancy, but he has raised a tremendous amount of money for himself. And while people are still questioning the halo effect, you don't see a lot of those dollars moving into the campaign. So it will be an aggressive fight down to the last minute for those dollars to mobilize and do the get out the vote efforts. But people have pretty much solidified what side of the aisle they're going to be on with respect to voting.
Much to the frustration of Republican fundraisers, the former president, is raising that money, and he is keeping it to himself. Leslie Sanchez, right. Ashley Etienne, it's so great to see the two of you side by side. Hope to see a lot more of you in the months to come.
Same here. Same here.
Thank you.
Talk.
More details about Georgia Senate candidate Herschel Walker's family are emerging. What he told reporters today when we take you to the Peach State next. You're streaming Red and Blue.
You ready? A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming free speech.
It's evident that there's a wave of censorship across the nation.
Angry partisan debate in schools.
College campuses have not been a place of intellectual diversity for the longest time now.
Are loud voices silencing a generation.
I don't feel comfortable speaking out.
I started to realize I wasn't even discussing stuff in class. I was keeping all my thoughts to myself.
Are the kids all right? Free speech. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When weather turns extreme,
The 150-mile-per-hour hurricane is still churning north.
every second counts.
Massive and rapidly intensifying.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bringing virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
Well over 9 feet. This is not survivable.
You'll have time to get prepared.
You want to have the advantage on severe weather days.
It just may save your life.
CBS News and extreme weather. Feel the forecast.
Go to the ends of the earth
Right now.
We got something crazy.
and reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
I'm open to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
We found it.
You're kidding me?
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
I'm here for you. Take an orange? Yes. You do? Here. America needs drivers.
And we're here to help.
What are you learning from Girls on the Run?
Never give up and to always keep trying.
If I'm a parent in your state, I'm like, what's Congress doing? Beyond this gate is actually the border with Ukraine. We've seen people not just opening their hearts to Ukrainian refugees, but their homes. Where will you go?
The Democrats are desperate to hold on to this seat here. They're desperate to make this race about my family because they know they don't want to talk about Joe Biden and Raphael Warnock, what they've done to Georgia families. They're desperate to hold on to power. They're willing to say and do anything. But let me tell you this, I'm not deterred, I'm not scared.
That was Georgia Republican Senate candidate Herschel Walker earlier today in response to allegations he paid for a woman's abortion, even though he opposes abortion at the federal level. In a follow-up report from the Daily Beast, the woman at the center of the controversy says she's the mother of one of his children. For more, CBS News politics reporter Aaron Navarro joins us from Georgia. He has been following this day by day. Aaron, thank you so much for being with us. So what did Herschel Walker have to say today when he took questions from reporters, and how does it square with the new reporting from the Daily Beast?
Hi, Nancy. Thanks for having me. I think the key word is deny. He called that report a lie. He called it false. He said the things my son, Christian, even though while he says he loves him, the things he's talking about never happened. He has no idea what they're about. One interesting other comment that he made, Hugh Hewitt, he said essentially that this didn't happen, but if it did, there's no shame in that. Reporters today pressed him on that. Does that maybe conflict with his other stances on abortion? He said he was talking about something entirely different. So the main thing I got from Herschel Walker's gaggle today was deny and call this report false.
Right, I did see that backtrack, and you know, there's new reporting every day from the Daily Beast. What are they saying now about the woman who alleges that he paid for her to get an abortion?
So last night, the Daily Beast reported that the woman that he allegedly paid for an abortion for is the mother of one of his children that he had out of wedlock. Now, CBS News has not independently verified or confirmed that information, but I will note he was asked, have you reached out to any of the mothers of your children regarding this allegation? He said, no. Why would I? Kind of signaling that he doesn't believe this report is credible enough for him to even dig deeper into who is making those leaks or who is making those allegations.
Story that is dominating this race in Georgia with just 5 weeks to go. Aaron Navarro, thank you so much. Well, that does it for today. You can stream Red and Blue Monday to Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. And a reminder, if you want to watch previous episodes of the program, you can see them anytime on the CBS News website. Just head to cbsnews.com/red and blue.
You ready? A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for